Welcome back, deep divers. Today we're going to take a deep dive into, well, the deep dive, right? Just kidding. We're actually going all the way back to 1922 Germany for this one.
1922, huh? Setting the stage early, I see.
Gotta give the listeners a sense of time and place, you know? We're diving into F.W. Murnau's Nosferatu.
Ah, a classic. A true landmark, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. We've got a synopsis, of course, a really detailed plot summary, and a whole lot to unpack about this silent film masterpiece.
Silent film, huh? Always a challenge, but that's where the real artistry lies.
Definitely. It's all about the visuals, the atmosphere, the way Murnau builds suspense without relying on dialogue.
Well, let's not forget the music. Silent films weren't actually silent, you know? They had live musical accompaniment, often improvised, which added a whole other layer to the experience.
Oh, for sure. It's like a live soundtrack reacting to the action on screen. But getting back to Nosferatu, what makes it so fascinating, I think, is how it emerged from a specific cultural moment, right?
Right. You're talking about post-World War I Germany, right? A time of great social and political upheaval, economic instability, anxieties about disease, and societal collapse.
Exactly. And Murnau, a master of German Expressionism, uses this backdrop to craft a visual masterpiece that reflects those anxieties while simultaneously pushing the boundaries of cinematic storytelling.
Now, you mentioned something earlier about Nosferatu being an unauthorized adaptation.
Oh yeah, almost forgot. Nosferatu is actually based on Bram Stoker's Dracula, but Murnau and his team didn't secure the rights to the novel.
So they just went ahead and made it anyway. Bold move.
Well, they changed some names and details, hoping to avoid legal trouble. But Bram Stoker's widow wasn't fooled, and she sued for copyright infringement.
And almost succeeded in having all copies of the film destroyed. Talk about a testament to its power, surviving against all odds.
You know, it's a reminder that great art often finds a way, right?
Right. But enough about legal battles. Shall we get into the film itself?
Absolutely, let's dive in. This story begins with Thomas Hutter, a young real estate clerk who is sent to Transylvania.
Transylvania. Sounds ominous already.
Oh, it is. He's sent to meet with the mysterious Count Orlok, who wants to buy a property in Wisborg, Hutter's hometown.
And from the get-go, Murnau sets a chilling tone. I always love that scene in the tavern where everyone reacts with terror when Hutter mentions he's going to Transylvania.
Oh, man, that scene gives me chills every time. The way everyone falls silent, the looks of dread on their faces, pure foreshadowing.
Brilliantly done. Murnau really understood how to use atmosphere and suggestion to create suspense. He doesn't need dialogue to convey the sense of dread that surrounds Orlok. The audience immediately understands that Hutter is stepping into a world of darkness.
And then there's the journey itself, right? All those unsettling encounters along the way. Like the coach driver who seems to vanish into thin air.
Yeah, what's up with that? Is he a vampire too? Or just a crinky dude?
Murnau leaves it to our imagination, and that's what makes it so effective. It's like he's constantly reminding us that we're entering a realm where the rules of reality don't quite apply.
A bit like this podcast sometimes. But okay, so Hutter finally arrives at Orlok's castle. What's that like?
Oh man, that castle. It's like something straight out of a nightmare, with its crumbling walls, shadowy corridors, and that looming sense of decay.
The perfect visual representation of Orlok himself.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a creature of darkness and death, and the castle is his domain. And then there's Max Schreck's performance as Orlok. It's truly iconic, in my opinion.
I can't disagree. Those piercing eyes, the elongated fingers, the way he moves with this unsettling, almost predatory grace. No wonder rumors spread that Schreck himself might have actually been a vampire.
Oh, I've heard those rumors too.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the power of his performance, the way he embodies the otherworldly nature of the vampire.
Well, let's give credit to Murnau's direction here. The way he uses shadows to obscure Orlok's features, to make him seem less than human, it's incredibly effective. A masterclass in visual storytelling.
Yeah, I think that's what sets Nosferatu apart from other vampire films, even today. It's not just about the scares, it's about the atmosphere, the way Murnau creates this palpable sense of dread.
It's like he's painting with darkness, using shadow and light to create a world that is both beautiful and terrifying.
So true. Okay, so back to the story. Hutter's trapped in the castle. He's starting to realize the true nature of his host, and then there's that moment where he cuts his finger, right?
And Orlok just loses it completely.
Totally. He lunges towards Hutter, driven by this insatiable thirst for blood. But here's the thing. Murnau doesn't show us the actual bite.
He leaves it to our imagination, which, in my opinion, is even more terrifying.
I totally agree. The unseen horror is always more powerful than what's explicitly shown. And then we have this parallel storyline unfolding back in Wisborg with Ellen.
That's Hutter's wife, right?
Yes. She's sleepwalking, seemingly drawn to Orlok. It's as if there's this psychic connection between them, a foreshadowing of the hold that Orlok will soon have over her. You remember that book Hutter finds in the castle?
Oh, yeah. A Vampire's Terrible Ghosts, Magic, and the Seven Deadly Sins. Quite a title.
Right. It's like Murnau is giving us, the audience, a guidebook to the horrors we're about to witness.
And isn't there another copy of that book back in Wisborg with Ellen?
Exactly. It's like a link between them, a way for Orlok's influence to reach beyond the confines of his castle. But getting back to Hutter, he eventually manages to escape the castle.
But not without a terrifying encounter as he's leaving, right? Orlok is packing up his coffin to depart for Wisborg, and Hutter almost gets caught.
Oh yeah, that shot of Orlok's shadow creeping up the wall as Hutter scrambles out the window. Pure nightmare fuel. It's like Orlok's shadow is an extension of himself, a physical manifestation of his evil that can reach out and touch his victims even from afar.
It really is one of the most iconic images from the film, isn't it? And that shadow is going to continue to haunt us as Orlok makes his way to Wisborg.
Bringing with him a plague that will devastate the town.
And that's where things really get interesting. Interesting, right? I mean, it's not just a simple vampire story anymore. It becomes this chilling reflection of what was happening in Germany at the time.
Yeah, you're right. The plague that Orlok brings with him on the ship, it's not just a physical threat. It's like a metaphor for the societal decay and fear that was gripping Germany after World War I.
Murnau is using it, right, to visualize these unseen forces that can cripple a nation just like the war did. And let's talk about the arrival of the ship, man. That whole sequence is so powerful.
Oh, don't even get me started.
Yeah.
The brats scurrying out of the hold, the ghostly crew, that poor captain lashed to the helm. It's like something straight out of a nightmare.
Pure nightmare fuel, I agree. And then you've got Orlok himself stepping ashore with that coffin of his, just casting this long, menacing shadow over the town.
It's such a potent image. The way Murnau frames him as this, bringer of death.
Like, he's not just bringing a disease, right, but he's bringing this darkness that's going to consume everything in its path, and then the plague spreads through Wisborg, and it's just as chilling. Those white crosses on the doors, the empty streets, the growing panic. It's a stark reminder of how fragile life is, you know?
Yeah, and meanwhile, poor Hutter, he's racing home to Wisborg, completely unaware of the horror that's unfolding there.
Right. And then you've got Ellen starting to sense Orlok's presence. She even has these weird premonitions, doesn't she?
It's like she's being drawn to the darkness, even though she knows it's dangerous. Oh, and remember that book on vampires?
Of course.
Yeah.
It's almost as if it's acting as a conduit, drawing Orlok's attention to Ellen, don't you think?
It's such a creepy detail. And then we have Nock, Hutter's former employer. He's totally lost it and become obsessed with Orlok.
Nock. Now, he's an interesting one. A study in how evil can corrupt people.
You said it. He represents the dark side of human nature. You know, the part of us that is drawn to chaos and destruction. And then his escape from the asylum. That's both disturbing and strangely comical at the same time.
It's like he's enjoying his madness, like he's dancing on the edge of the abyss.
Totally. As the plague tightens its grip on Wisborg, the town descends into chaos and paranoia. It's like everyone's turning on each other, desperate to find someone to blame.
And the whole time, Orlok is just lurking in the shadows, watching Ellen from his new home across the street. But hey, before we move on, we have to talk about the way Murnau uses shadow and light in this part of the film.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's practically painting with darkness.
I love the scene when Orlok enters his new home. The way his shadow stretches across the floor, reaching towards Ellen's house. It's like a visual metaphor for how he's invading her space, her life.
And those long, eerie shadows that follow him everywhere. It's like they're extensions of his evil, reaching out to touch everything around him. This is what makes Nosferatu so different from other vampire films, even today. It's not just about jump scares or gore.
It's all about the atmosphere, right? How he creates this feeling of dread that you can almost touch.
Exactly. And it's not just visual either, it's thematic too. I mean, think about it. These shadows represent the unseen forces that shape our lives, like our deepest fears and desires.
And in Nosferatu, those shadows come to life, taking a physical form in Orlok. That's such a brilliant way to look at it.
And it's what makes the film so enduring. It speaks to our deepest, most primal fears.
Mm-hmm.
The darkness that we all carry inside of us. Okay, so getting back to the story. Orlok is totally fixated on Ellen. And she's starting to realize that she may be the only one who can stop him.
But she's terrified, right? She's caught between her fear of him And I don't know, this weird fascination with the whole vampire thing. Remember when she reads that book? It talks about how a vampire can be defeated by a pure maiden who offers her blood willingly.
It's like that passage plants a seed in her mind, and it starts to grow. She knows she has to do something, but sacrificing herself is a terrifying thought.
Yeah, but on some level she's drawn to it. Maybe it's a way to gain control in a situation where she feels powerless. I mean, remember, she's trapped in this society where women are expected to just be quiet and obedient.
So in a way, by confronting Orlok, she's kind of breaking free from those expectations. It's like she's asserting her own agency.
I never thought about it like that before. It adds a whole new layer to her character. She's not just a helpless victim, is she? She's a woman willing to fight for her survival, even if it means making the ultimate sacrifice.
Wow, that's really insightful. And it's ultimately what leads to Orlok's downfall. So tell me about that scene,
Yeah.
pivotal scene.
She sends Hutter away, pretends to be ill, and then, oh man, she opens her window, inviting Warlock in. Talk about bravery, but also despair. And Murnau's direction, the way he films the scene, it's just masterful. That slow, creeping dread as Orlok's shadow envelops her bed.
And that shot, that iconic shot of him leaning over her, his shadow cast across her body.
Yeah.
It's both terrifying and somehow erotic.
A moment of pure vulnerability and danger. It's like that moment captures the whole essence of the vampire myth, doesn't it? The seduction, the danger, the violation. But it's also a moment of defiance on her part.
Right, she's choosing to confront the monster, to sacrifice herself to save everyone else.
And it works. Orlok is so caught up in the moment that he forgets about the approaching dawn.
The rooster crows, and he realizes his mistake.
A classic case of hubris. The vampire's own arrogance leads to his downfall. And the way Murnau films it with those quick cuts between Orlok's panic and the rising sun, it's so effective.
And then that final shot of Orlok dissolving into dust as sunlight hits him, it's both beautiful and horrifying.
A visual representation of the vampire's ultimate weakness. It's a moment of triumph, right? Not just for Ellen, but for the entire town. The plague is lifted, the darkness is gone, and Wisborg can finally start to heal. But it's bittersweet.
Definitely. Ellen pays the ultimate price for her heroism, and Hutter is left to grieve for the woman who sacrificed herself to save him and the town.
A reminder, I think, that even in victory, there can be loss, and that the battle against darkness often comes at a great personal cost. So what does it all mean? Why is Nosferatu still so powerful after all this time?
That's the big question, isn't it? I think it's how Murnau taps into those really basic primal fears, the fear of the unknown, the fear of disease, the fear of death itself. But it's also how he shows us the strength of the human spirit, the willingness to fight back against the darkness, even when it feels hopeless.
Ellen's sacrifice is both tragic and inspiring at the same time. It's the kind of courage and selflessness that we admire in heroes. And her story, even though it's told without any words, speaks volumes about love and sacrifice. But we can't forget the film's technical brilliance either.
Totally. The shadows and light, the camera work, that haunting score, everything comes together to create this incredibly powerful and lasting effect.
I think it's amazing, how a film made almost 100 years ago can still feel so relevant today. We talked about the historical stuff, but those themes, fear, isolation, the whole struggle against darkness, it's like they resonate even more strongly now.
It's crazy, right? And to think, it all started with this unauthorized adaptation of Dracula.
That's what gets me, Murnau takes this story and turns it into something so universal. He taps into these primal fears about disease, about society falling apart, and he makes this story that goes beyond its time.
It's true. And then there's its legacy. I mean, think about it. Nosferatu didn't just bring vampires to the big screen. It basically set the standard for all horror movies.
Oh, totally. The way Murnau uses shadows and light to create the mood, those haunting images, the music, you can see its influence in so many horror films that came after.
It's like a blueprint, right? A blueprint for vampire movies. And it's still working, still fascinating and scaring people. And speaking of scary, remember that rumor about Max Schreck, the guy who played Orlok?
You mean the one about him actually being a vampire? Come on, you don't believe that, do you?
No. But it shows how powerful his performance was. He became the character, right? Blurred the lines between reality and fiction.
Totally. And the fact that Nosferatu has been remade so many times, that proves how strong and relevant it still is.
Oh, for sure. Have you seen Werner Herzog's remake from '79? The one with Klaus Kinski?
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's like he took the original story and gave it his own spin. A nice homage to Murnau's vision.
I think that's what's so cool about Nosferatu. Every generation finds something new in it. Whether it's that feeling of being alone or the fear of getting sick or even the seductive side of darkness, it just keeps speaking to people.
Absolutely, and it makes you want to watch it again and again. You always notice new things. It's like peeling back layers, you know? And then there's the conversations it starts, the debates about its meaning, its symbols, its impact on film history. It's pretty amazing what silent films can do, right?
Yeah, it shows you don't need words to tell a powerful story. Emotions can be just as strong even without dialogue.
Nosferatu proves that for sure. Real horror doesn't need jump scares or all that gore. It's about atmosphere, about suggestion, about playing with our deepest fears.
Murnau, he was a master at that, using visuals, sounds, and storytelling to create this experience that really stays with you.
It gets under your skin, doesn't it? Makes you think about the shadows, about the darkness that's maybe hiding inside all of us.
Well said. Nosferatu is a true masterpiece, that's for sure. A film that goes beyond time and genre. If you're a fan of horror, you just have to see it.
It's a film that makes you question things long after it's over. A true testament to the power of the vampire myth.
And on that note, we're wrapping up our deep dive into Nosferatu. We hope you enjoyed this journey back to 1922.
Hope you learned a thing or two.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of film. See you next time, folks.